a point that you just switch the x and y's, we're going to look and find the inverse equation, okay? So it's pretty much the same concept of where x becomes y and y becomes x, but because you have an equation, then you have to resolve for y, okay? So basically, when you're given an equation, it says, hey, find the inverse for the equation, you're literally going to do what we just did before. We're going to flip x and y, right? So we're given this one right here, and our step number one is we'll switch x and y. So where it says y, I'm going to put x, and where it says x, I'm going to put y. Okay? So we don't have numbers, but we have values, the variable. So that's all I do. And then it says, okay, now I need to solve for y. So now at this point, we're used to solving for x, so that's kind of a little different thought, but now I have to solve for y. I have to get y by itself. Okay, so solving for y means get y by itself. Okay, so how do I do that? I'm going to add 9 to both sides first, right? So I'm going to go x plus 9 equals y squared. Okay, and then how do I get rid of a square? Square root it. So I'm going to take the square root of it, so y is going to equal the square root of x plus 9.
What happens if I subtracted 9?
Yeah, it's wrong because you have a minus here. You want to add, you have to add 9. You do the opposite to get rid of it, right? Okay. Now, when you square root something, how many options for answers do I have? 2. So when you do a square root, you do have to remember to do the plus and minus. Okay? And that is the inverse equation of that function. Yes? You have to take the square root of both sides, because it's x plus 9 is our term, so you have to take the square root of all of it. Like it's a term, it's this whole thing. Okay? Right, exactly right. Yeah. So this also is like f of x to the negative 1, you guys. When I take the inverse, I'm really doing the fx of negative 1. Okay? So remember, inverse is, when you see that, that is what you're doing. You're taking it, you're swapping it, and you're solving for the value. Okay? Alright, so let's look at this one. We have y equals 2x plus 8. I want you guys to try to find the inverse. So find, okay, sometimes you'll actually see it too where it says y to the negative 1. Sometimes you'll see that too. So let's find, on this one, the inverse of y equals 2x plus 8. Okay? Go ahead and give it a shot. Basically then, the whole point when you find the inverse is to swap the x and y, so it becomes x equals 2y plus 8, and then you solve for y, so I'm going to subtract the 8 to both sides, and then y is just going to equal then x minus 8 divided by 2. You probably would simplify that by y equals, let's say, 1/2 x minus 4. That's probably the best answer. Okay, and that's going to be y to the, they say negative 1, or you could do like the f of x to the negative 1 equals 1/2.
Why is it going to be that?
That's just your symbol saying that's the inverse of what you found.
Okay.
Okay?
So if it's an f of x, then where's the y?
F of x is a substitute for y. It's like y is one particular value, f of x is saying what values of x would you get y.
Okay.
So do you want us to simplify it, or is that just...
This is fine right here. I mean, you're going to have multiple choice answers when it comes to your quizzes and tests. Okay, so you just need to know, if you leave it like this, and this is the answer, you need to know that this is that answer. Okay, you need to understand what makes one or the other. Does that make sense? This is the best answer you've individually gone through and kind of taken the denominator and divide it through. So, all right. So notice here it says find f of x to the negative 1. Notice how it's saying this right here. It's not saying find the inverse, is it? Yeah.
So on the last one, I thought you said that they switch x and y. So wouldn't the 2x still be y? Wouldn't it be 2x equals y plus 8?
Okay, so this is the equation right here, x equals 2x plus 8. Yeah. So I switch x and y.
Okay, so you don't switch the values.
No, no. You don't switch the values, you only switch the variables. Okay? Alright, so now you guys might see it where it says this, f of x to the negative 1. You have to realize that means inverse. Okay? Alright, so here we have a bunch of them. Okay? I'm going to have you guys stop here. Okay? So go ahead and practice. You have 1, 2, 3, and 4. See what you guys can do. Okay? Alright, on the first one here, you switch. So x equals the square root of y minus 2. I need to get y by itself, so I'm going to square both sides. Squaring both sides allows me to then get rid of the square root. So this becomes x squared equals y minus 2. Add 2 to both sides, so y equals x squared plus 2. Okay? Did y'all get that? Alright, number 2. First of all, I switch. So x equals 10 minus 3y. So I'm going to add, I'm going to subtract 10. Actually, I'll just add the 3y to this side. I like to, and I'm going to subtract the x over. Oh yeah, it's a y. And then 10, and that's a plus, and then I divide by 3. Okay, and so in the end, I'm going to get y equals negative 1/3 x plus 10/3. Okay. If you had it as negative x plus 10 over 3, that's fine too. This is fine, either way. Okay? Alright, questions on that one?
Why is it negative? Why is it plus 10/3?
Okay, so up here, you guys, what I did is I have x equals 10 minus 3y. I don't like negative y. I'm solving for y, so I'm going to bring the y to the left-hand side.
You don't like that it's negative.
I don't like that it's negative, so I just add 3y to both sides. So I have 3y plus x equals 10, right? Okay? Alright, so at this point, then we have 3y plus x equals 10. So I'm trying to get y by myself, so I'm going to subtract the x to the other side. Right? So I have 3y equals negative x plus 10. And then I have to divide by 3. Let's say you did it the other way. So let's say you went, okay, x equals 10 minus 3y. Let's say you just added the 10 to both sides, or subtracted 10 to both sides. So you're going to do x minus 10 equals negative 3y. I have to divide by a negative 3. Okay, so then this becomes negative 1/3 x. I have a negative 10 over negative 3, which is a positive 10 over 3, and that equals y. So you should get the exact same answer regardless which way you do it. Okay? Alright, so then let's do number 3. It's going to be x equals y squared minus 4. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I got x plus 4 equals y squared. I'm going to take a square root to get rid of the square. And so I'm going to be left with y equals the square root of x plus 4. But how many answers do I have when I take the square root? 2. So plus or minus should go there. Okay? And then the last one is, okay, x equals y cubed plus 1. So at this point I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I got y cubed equals x minus 1. And then I got to take the cube root. So y equals the cube root of x minus 1.
Is it positive or negative as well?
Nope, because you can have a negative on a cube root.
So we don't write positive.
Not positive. Plus or minus is only when you have a even root that you're taking.
Like 4.
Okay. So questions on that? Okay, there is application as to why you would do what we just did, but due to time constraints, we don't get into that because they're story problems. They're real-life situations, and it's like, hey, this is a situation. What would happen if I did this instead? It's completely it's a total business function, you guys. It's, all right, if I would up my price and then take a discount later, is that better than if I discount my price and don't give this profit, or don't give like this incentive? Like this is what you do. You do a cause and effect on certain situations, and this is the one situation, and then what would be doing it the opposite way. And so these are the formulas that would be the case on. Okay, we don't get into that because of time, and if you guys those going into AQR, you will use a lot of that type of evaluation. So there you go. All right, questions on that? All right, flip to 7-9. You guys can cross out this whole back page. This whole back page here, cross it out, and flip to 7-9. Well, here's the thing. This really should be review. This 100% should be review on what you do with the certain variables. Now what we're looking at, though, is we're looking at graphs. And can you think of all the different ways we've done graphs? We've done absolute value, we've done parabolas, and you know how you have A, H, and K? Okay, we have A, H, and K this time. And the only difference with these graphs now is what you are going to notice is that your equation is going to have a square root symbol in it, okay? It's going to have a square root symbol. So if I just would plot out what this looks like, okay, y equals the square root of x, it's going to look something like this. If I put in 0, what's y? If square root of x is what? Square root is what? 0. If I put in 1, what's the square root of 1? 1. If I put in 4, what's the square root of 4? Square root. 2. If I put in 9, what's the square root?
3.
Okay. So when I'm taking a square root function and I would graph it, it's going to look something like this. 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 2, and then 9, 3. And it looks something like this. Okay? And so when you're doing a square root, you're going to have like kind of almost a half of a parabola. It's going to start at a point, it's going to be a little curved line going up or down, or it could actually go down, depending on the two. And you have these things called the transformations that we're used to seeing. A, H, and K. Yay! And just by looking A, H, and K, you should be able to graph your graph. Okay? So as before, A is our vertical stretch. Okay? Where if A is greater than 0, your graph is going to look like this. If A is less than 0, meaning it's a negative number, it's going to go like this. Okay? It's going to reflect. Do you remember that word? Does it reflect? Remember that? There you go. Okay? H is our horizontal. What variable does that represent? X or Y? Remember? X. Okay? It's our horizontal shift. Okay? And it's, again, the opposite direction. So if I have x minus 2, it's going to shift 2 to the right. If I say x plus 2, it's going to shift 2 to the left. Because remember how it's minus that? It's always the opposite. Okay? And then K, what does that represent? Vertical shift. Okay? And so that's our Y. So this are going to go our up and down, and this is going to go our left and right. Okay? And again, it looks like a sideways parabola. Okay? You'll have no negative x values because you're taking the square root. Okay? So you won't be having that. You won't have any of that. Okay? It's always increasing. Okay? So that should really be reviewed on 99.9% of that because we have done A, H, and K. This is literally the 4th time we have done it, believe it or not. And I know on the final there are 4 graphs because we've done this 4 times.
How many questions are on the formula?
I think 47.
So not as many as the review.
No. All right. So the domain, you guys, again, is what can x and y values be. So here, notice how it stops. You can't have a negative x, so it's going to stop. We're going to have where it is 0 to infinity. Okay, x can be anything greater than or equal to 0. And our range is going to be 0 to infinity. So y is going to be greater than or equal to 0. Do you notice anything about those values in relation to h and k? What's h on this one? What's h on this parent?
Square root of 0.
0. What's k on this one? And what's A? 1. Okay, so H and K always exist. Okay? H and K always exist, and A always exists, but if you don't see them, those are the default values. Okay? So they're always there. Got it? Okay. When you start your T-chart, okay, the question is, where should I start? Start with H and K. Okay? Look at that hook. Didn't realize I spelled that. Start with H and K as your starting values of your T-chart, okay, and then go up. That is how you're going to find values of X, that when you plug them in, you take the square root of it, it makes sense, right? Well, you don't, yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, so find, like, this is just a square root of X, so I'm like, oh, those are easy ones, 4, 9, do things like that. On this one here, let's look at the bottom one here. What is A? 2. What is H? -5. And what is K? It is 0. So when I start my T-chart, I want to start -5, 0.
Why is it -5?
Because it's always, H is always the opposite of what's right here. Because the formula, okay, is X minus H. So for it to be a +5, H had to be a -5. Okay?
If it was already a negative.
If it was
-5.
If it was X minus 5, then H would equal 5. It's always, H is always the opposite. When you have the equation, it's always the opposite. Okay? Good? Alright, so when I want to graph this, then I'm going to ask myself what would be a good square root. So if I do -5, well, -5 plus 5 is 0. The square root of 0 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Okay? So let's find a number that would be good. So what are some good numbers to take square roots of? 2, no, 2 is not good. 1, 4, 9, 16, whatever. So how could I get, let's say, a 1 out of here? How can I get a 1 out of here? So how can I make a +5? I could do -4. So let's do -4. -4 plus 5 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1, and then 2. So this would be -4, 2. Right? If I make this -1, that would give this to be a +4, right? -1, yeah, so that'd be 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And then let's do 4. 4 plus 5 is 9, which is 3. 3 times 2, 6. Okay, so I have plenty of points, okay? So I'm going to go and plot. I'll do -5, 0. Okay. I'll do -4, 2. I'll do -1, 4. And I'll do 4, 6. Okay, and then I'll connect them like this. Alright, so again, it's kind of like a half a parabola tilted.
Do you want the arrow on the ground?
No, no. You want, to go off the ground? Right here? This is fine, just like that. You guys, here's the difference between this one too. There is not 2 arrows. It's only the one that's going out. Your H and K is like a dot. It's a starting point. Okay, so you're not going to have an arrow here. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So.
Domain.
So, what's that? Hold on. Okay, so now we're going to look at the domain. Okay, so what can X be? It's going to be the -5 to infinity. Right? So it's this value to infinity. And then your Y, your range. Well, your range is going to be your K to infinity. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Your K is 0. Now, flip. Bless you. Alright. I'm going to have you guys look at number 2 and try number 2 on your own. Again, indicate what is A, what is H, what is K. do like 4 points. I think 4 points, 4 to 5 are good. And then plot it out. So let's just try and do one right now. So on here, for when you get these, for any of your equations you guys ever graph, A, H, and K. I hope you guys are kind of got that by now. Okay? So A is going to be my -1/2, H is going to be -8, and K is going to be 0. So my starting point is going to be H and K. So I'm going to start here and just do -8, 0. Okay? From this point, I want to work my way so X gets bigger. But I want to find numbers that are easy to take square roots of. So let's do, I'm going to do -4. When I do -4, I got -1. And then I'm going to do 1, and I'm going to get a -3/2. Why am I getting a negative?
Yes.
Because I'm multiplying by a -1. So if I do 1, 1 plus 8 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 times a -1/2 is -3/2. Okay? So are we all good with how to take X values and plug them into equations to get your Y?
Yes.
Okay. So then I just start plotting. So it's -8, 0, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, something right in here. And then I have -4, -1. So that goes like this. And then I have 1 and a -3/2, which is like this. So if you notice, many of you are like, oh, I can't do that, it's negative. Alright, so then it can go negative. And the reason that is, if you recall, our A value, okay, our A value here is what shows us if it's going above or if it's going below. Okay? It's negative, so it's going to go below. Okay? It's based on the x-axis, right? Always, okay? Your A is actually 2. Your A is going to be your slope. It's going to tell you how much it's going down and how much it's going, like, not going down. Notice how it's a -1/2, it's not decreasing as much. Yes?
So if you plug in 1 plus 8 is 9.
Square root of 9 is 3.
Oh, then that's 3, okay.
Okay? Alright, so questions on that? Now remember, this is your starting point, this is your H and K, alright? And it is your starting point, and you just get X is bigger. So your domain is always going to be -8, it's going to be your H value to infinity, and then your Y is going to be your, what's that?
Is it K?
Well, it's K in the fact that that's going to be at beginning or end point, because Y is less than 0. Okay, it's actually going to -infinity. Notice how it's going down? So this actually becomes where we say, we want to do -infinity to 0. Do it that way. So our range for Y is 0 to -infinity, because it goes here down. So when A is negative, when A is less than 0, then you're going to have it where it goes to -infinity, not to positive infinity.
Why is the domain?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it positive?
Because X starts here, okay, and it goes, its value keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger this way, right?
Yeah.
So it's positive infinity, okay?
So on the other side, if the arrow is going.
If it's going, this is the up and down, this affects the range, not the domain.
Yeah, but if it was going.
If it was going this way, then it'd be negative, right? Okay. All right. Are we comfortable with that? All right. So let's flip for a second. Okay, so we've had it before where you guys have been given like an absolute value graph, and we're like, what's the equation? We've given you a parabola before, and we're saying, what's the absolute value? Find the equation. We've given you the graph, and you've had to find the equation, because you can pick out A, you can pick out H, and you can pick out K. You can do the same thing here. You can look at a graph, and you can pick out A, H, and K. Now, H and K are always going to be your starting point, right? That's going to be your X value starting point. Okay? Oh, I don't know, starting point. Your K value will be your Y value starting point. Now your A is the one that looks a little bit like, I don't know how to choose that. So what your A is going to be, it's going to be your slope between your first 2 points. Okay? So this is your starting point right here. This is your H and K. And then this is your second point in which you'll determine your value. Okay? If you're on a graph, you probably can just count. Like, oh, how many am I going up? How am I going over, right? It's the rise over the run. So what is A in this case? A is 1. Okay? If you can't see it and they actually give you the physical points, then you got to calculate your own slope. Okay? What is H on this one? -2. What is K on this one? It is -2. Alright, so we know that our equation, if you don't remember it, is going to be y equals A, the square root of x minus h plus k. Alright, this is the equation for the square root function. Okay? So, can I write it? I sure can. Y equals, well, what's my A value? 1. So I do the square root of, I got x minus a -2, so it becomes x plus 2. And then I have minus 2 as my k. Now remember, k is outside of the square root. Only the h is inside the square root. So if you don't want that 1 there, you don't have to write it. Just y equals the square root of x plus 2 minus 2. And then that's your equation. Okay? So now let's look at number 2. Alright, first of all, is this an increasing? Oh, let's write increasing here. Is this increasing or decreasing? It's decreasing. So if it's decreasing, what does that tell you about the value of A? Yeah, it's going to be a negative value, right? Okay, so I need to find A, H, and K. Okay, I'm going to find the ones that are the easiest. To me, H and K are the easiest ones, right? So what is H and K? H is 0. 3. K is 3. Okay? So now I just have to find A. So what's my slope going to be? So this is 0.1, this is 0.2. So it's rise over run. So what would my slope be? Yeah, I'm going down 3 over 1. So it's going to be down 3 over 1. So that becomes, and I'm going down, so it's a negative. So A becomes -3. Right? So can I write this equation now? Alright, y equals -3 square root of x. There is no h since it's 0. And then it's going to be plus 3. And that's that equation. Okay? So go ahead and try 3 and 4 on your own. Alright, so when you see a graph and it says find the formula, okay, you're going to have to understand that there's 4 different types of graphs that you probably will be asked to do this on. They all have the A, H, and K. Alright, so if you guys can remember that, you should be pretty easy to find A, H, and K. Okay? So what is A? Well, first of all, it's H and K. I always like H and K better to start with. It's your starting point. So what is that?
That is -1, 0.
That is -1, 0. Okay? So what is A? A is my slope. So it's going to be the first point over the second point. So is your rise over your run. I'm going up 3 over 1. Is it increasing or decreasing? It's increasing. It's positive. So therefore A is positive. So this becomes y equals 3 square root of x plus 1 and then plus 0. You don't have to put that on there. Okay? Good? Alright. Starting point here. What is H and K? What is H? -1. What is K? 3. Alright, what is A? Rise over run, so it's going down 1 over 1. So it's down 1 over 1, which is -1. Okay?
Number 3, why did you switch the sign on 3? Oh, never mind.
So then I'm going to have y equals A, which is -1 square root of x minus h, which is plus 1 plus 3. So it could be a y equals -square root of x plus 1 plus 3. Okay?